After installing xStream into Cinema, you will find that all of the commands are accessible through the top menu. It says View 7 xStream. I'm using 7.5 right now, but it shouldn't make too big of a difference if you're using version 7, because I'm not really going to be focusing on any of the new features that are separate from 7.4 to 7.5. Now, the fact that this menu is the primary way of accessing all the tools makes it really difficult to use, and definitely slows down what you can do within the program. If you take a look on the right, I've set up some icons and a couple of palettes to access all of the xStream commands, or at least the most commonly used ones. This palette is available in the project content folder with the training. However, the icons are not included with the palette. So you will need to display text in order to be able to see which commands are what. You can set up your own customization of palettes, and Cinema 4D has an extremely powerful set of UI customization tools. So we're going to take a look at how to create your own palettes and also how to create a script so that you can assign an icon to a command. So first, let's just take a look at breaking apart the menu and being able to make your own palettes that way. The easiest way to do this is just make sure that your lock layout is turned off. Makes it a little easier. Go up to the view menu and there'll be a little bar that will light up. And you can just click on that and it will extract the palette, but keep your menu in place. And I also have too, if I right mouse click, access to even more common commands within view. Edit object material, graph, object properties, loading in new materials, accessing the render options, and then copy, paste, and cut. And then this bake to polygons is a cinema command. So I'll also show you how you can modify this menu, because that can be extremely helpful. So now what we can do is go into all of these different palettes and just click and hold down, and that'll pull up the menu, and you can just deselect with that top bar, and that will allow you to extract everything. And it looks like the object group was not included with this. So I'll need to go up to the xStream menu, go to Object, and then I can break that off. So this is just pulling out all of the menus and all of the commands. So we have quite a few of them. We can close out this main extraction, and really how you want to customize it is up to you. The one I designed over here on the right, this layout that it's included, or the palette, I find pretty easy to work with. A lot of common commands together, and some of them by themselves. So now we need to create a couple of new palettes to work with. And it's good to have a few open, because we are going to be collapsing some of them, or you can collapse them to make it so that you have one command showing, and when you click on it, it'll open up a bunch of other commands. So what you can do is right mouse click on any icon or palette and select New Palette. We're just going to create two of them. And these commands can also be accessed through the command manager. So if we right mouse click on any palette again, we can see we have the command manager. if this doesn't show up, I've also got the script manager and the menu manager in here. These might have been customized personally. I think the menu manager was. You can go up to Window at the top, and you can see that under Layout, we have the Command Manager and the Menu Manager, and then the Script Manager is in the main panel. And the easiest way in the Command Manager, we'll just go ahead and open that up. What we have is a plugin, and if you click on that, and click on it twice, xStream should show up right away, and it's going to go ahead and group all of the xStream commands together. And you can also drag these out of the command manager directly into a palette. So if we wanted to take the terrain, another thing you want to pay attention to is looking at the information. It will tell you exactly what it does because a lot of these will have the same name. For instance, if we take a look at text, we have the replace by object and replace by fit object, so keep proportions or fit object, and those are both called text. And then the actual text command is also called text. So if you take a look under the information, it'll tell you whether it's an edit command or an object command. And that can make it a little bit easier to kind of figure out what you're working with. So you can easily drag those out into a palette, or you can select from any of the available options we have. Now to move these around, you're going to need to right mouse click and go to Edit Palettes. So now anything you click and drag, you can move around, and it is going to remove it from the palette it's currently in, although it will not modify the main menu. Now all we're seeing is this default icon. So if we right mouse click, and where we can see icons, there's also a text option. I'm going to go ahead and turn on text. And then we can turn off icons, and you can set some of the different sizes if you are going to use an icon. But for that, you'll need to create a script, which is really quite easy. It's just kind of time consuming to do it for every command. One thing you could do is if you wanted to have a palette like this, is create just icons for the main palette, so that when you click on the drop-down menus, you don't really need to have any of the icons showing for that. You could just have the icon showing for that main command. But in order for that command to stay constant, what you need to do is use the lock icon. So I'll show you that really quick. We're just going to grab some random elements, random commands in here, just to fill it up a bit. Now, if you want this to display vertically or going down, you can right mouse click and go to transpose, and that will switch the palette around. And another thing is being able to collapse it can be pretty important. So first we're going to turn off the edit palettes for now. And if we right mouse click, we can go to fold palette. Now it's folded, and we have the ability to open up a menu when we click and see all of those available options. So a good thing to do is just create a palette, fold it, and then you can drag it into your main palette that you're setting up. So it's good to have a couple of palettes open. And if you want to save the palette, you can just right mouse click, go save palette. Same thing with loading in a new one. So to access the one that comes with the training, anywhere in the interface, you can right mouse click on an icon, go to load palette, and just load that one in. And if you want to save out the interface, you go to Window, Layout, and you can save your layout as whatever you'd like. And then you'll also be able to access all of your different layouts. I've got a couple in here for depending on what I'm working on. So those will be accessible through one of your icons. and going through your different available layouts. Let's take a look at just assigning an icon really quick. We're going to right mouse click and go to the script manager, where you can see I have a script for every single xStream command. And in order to create and assign the icon, you'll also need to open the command manager, or you can even drag in some of these commands. And what I'm going to do is just create a new script and call it random. And keep in mind that every time you create a new script, it is going to reset the command manager, so you'll need to click that plugin twice. Now, if you have more plugins, obviously View 7 may not show up right away, but it's a really easy way to sort through it since it is so close to the bottom of the list. And all you need to do is just take the command you want. So we're going to take the sphere and just drag it into this script window, which is going to say call command, give its reference number, which is, in this case, our sphere. We can also see the ID is down here. And if you want to assign an icon, you can just load an icon and load in a file. Typical size for an icon is 32 by 32 pixels. You might be able to make them larger. I'm not sure if they'll show up in the interface that way. But with Cinema 4D, the largest icon is typically 32 by 32 pixels. And TIFF format seems to work the best. And you can have transparency enabled with that in order to be able to see your user's interface color that you have set in the background behind the icon. So you can use a TIFF with transparency, and those seem to work the best. And then when you're done, you would save out your script, and all of those scripts are available under the plugins drop-down menu. And what you can do is, with the script window open, we have this random script. You can just drag the icon into one of your palettes. So if you have an icon for it, it will show up. So customizing the interface can be really pretty important for using xStream. You have an option, of course, to set it up just like it is in View, where you have maybe a top bar and a left bar. But Cinema is really flexible, so you can pretty much do whatever you want with it. What we're going to look at now is editing that right-click menu. So we need to go to the menu manager. And the first one that shows up for me is m_editor, where we can see the main group on the top. But one of the most useful is the right mouse click in the interface, so that when you have an object selected, you can select these commands to access object properties and be able to swap items out if needed. And this is m_view pop-up. For me, it's on all the way to the bottom of the list. If you've created new menus, then it could be in a different place. For this, what you want to do is go back to your edit palette mode, and you can drag commands directly into this menu. Go and turn off edit palettes. And because I haven't saved the changes, it's not going to show up. Once you save the changes, you'll be able to see all those new commands in the right-click menu. This will not work if directly right-clicking on the object, so you might have to go off into a gray area if you have an object selected. So just make sure that whenever you save any changes, or whenever you make any changes, that you save them. or you can create new menus. You can go back to the original if needed. There's a lot you can do with it to customize. Selecting commands, moving them up or down, also creating submenus. So if you wanted to create a submenu so that you right mouse click, so you can access your normal Cinema 4D commands, you could have a submenu, kind of like the new tag option, and put all of those commands in there. And you may even be able to put the entire xStream menu in there. When I was doing that in previous versions, I ran into problems, so it may not be something you want to do, but for the most part, you really want to grab just your common commands, because otherwise you're just going to be sorting through the list anyway, and there's really no different than having it at the top of the menu, maybe slightly quicker. So just kind of use the commands you find yourself using the most, and just put them in there. And always make sure that you're saving your changes to the layout. And I'm just going to go ahead and close all these out. And if you're not assigning icons, just make sure that you're showing the text rather than the icon. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to tell what it is you're using or clicking on. And anytime you make changes to the interface itself, you really want to make sure that you're saving the layout either as a new one or overwriting your original, which I typically wouldn't suggest, because otherwise you may not have something to go back to. So you could set it as your startup layout if you want to do that. So what you could do is save your layout, not overwriting your other one, and then save it as your startup layout if it's something you commonly use. So every time you open Cinema, you want to have those available. What I like to do is be able to just kind of collapse the palettes when I'm not using them. You can see I would just collapse that view menu. And that was done by holding down Control and then clicking on that bar that shows up. And that will collapse it. And you can do that with any menu within Cinema. So that's really nice to get some things out of the way. You can see I've got quite a few things collapsed. Materials, I've got a convert selection, the pictures, and having the picture output right here is kind of like using View, where you have your little preview on the right, so you could always set that up and then just Control click to collapse it. If you Alt click or Control right click, it'll just about do the same thing. And it might close every single palette that's under it. For the most part, Control and left mouse click will just do that one palette, and then you can collapse multiple palettes as well. You can see I've got my timeline and then also project settings all kind of collapsed at the same time. And now we have 3 different bars instead of just the one. You can collapse the whole entire thing as well. So it's really what you want to do with it. A lot of customization with Cinema. And with xStream, that's really important. So I think that pretty much covers editing the menus. There is one last thing, and that is the xStream Painter will also need its own command. And typically, you want to keep the xStream Painter command right next to, we go up, and the Paint ecosystem that is under Edit. Having those two right next to each other is important because you can't use the xStream Painter without hitting the Paint ecosystem command first. And we'll be taking a look at using the ecosystem painter later in the training.